26th, 2016 regular meeting of the New Albany Plain Local Board of Education. We're glad to have you with us this evening, and we recognize that for those of you who are watching at home, we are eventually going to be competing with presidential debates. And actually, we would all like to be home so that we can watch them as well. So with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order and request a roll call, please.
Mr. Newmoff?
Here.
Ms. Kalinowski? Here. Mr. Darrow?
Here.
Mr. McClellan is en route but absent right now. President Kohler?
I am here. Thank you very much. Would you all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. The first item up for this evening's business is approval of the board minutes from August 9th, 2016. And also, that was a board retreat. And then August 22nd, 2016, which was our regular meeting for the month of August. We've all had the opportunity to review the minutes in advance. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Darrow.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Newmoff. And could we have a roll call?
Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
President Kohler?
Yes, that motion carries as well. And that brings us to approval of the agenda. Before I entertain a motion, I'll ask if there are any additions or corrections to the agenda this evening.
Thank you, President Kohler. Board of Education members, if you turn in the agenda to page 6, there is a date correction related to David Mitchell. And on page 7, there's a change in job classification for Karen Kaiser to be a food service worker. The draft agenda that went on Friday had her in the wrong job class. Those are the 2 corrections that should appear in red on your agenda.
All right. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended, please?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
And a second. Are there any questions before we vote? All right. May we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
President Kohler?
Yes, that motion carries. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the substance of our meeting this evening, and we'll start with the superintendent's items.
Thank you, President Kohler. Before we begin the presentation on the local report card from the state of Ohio, I have one infomercial to basically give. We promised the Rotary. Ms. Jenkins and I are active members of the New Albany Rotary, and they're sponsoring Eagle Egg Drop to benefit the Student Activity Scholarship Fund at the New Albany Foundation. It's on October 8th, 2016. They're actively selling eggs. The goal is to sell 1,000 eggs at $100 each to have the opportunity within a raffle for eggs to be dropped out of a helicopter onto Alumni Field. To win up to $20,000 in prize money. The first prize is $10,000, the second prize is $5,000, third prize is $3,000, fourth prize is $2,000, and you can purchase eggs through the Rotary Eagle Egg Drop on eventbrite.com. We would greatly appreciate any support that the community and the school district continue to provide. We've had a very strong showing amongst staff and parents within the school district to support the Rotary fundraiser. And again, it benefits students within the New Albany Plain Local Schools related to the Student Scholarship Fund. So we would strongly encourage everyone, beyond the fact that you have a chance to win lots of money, to support the kids and actually allow the proceeds beyond the prize money to actually generate much needed scholarship funds for kids in the school district. The bulk of my presentation this evening is actually with other administrative staff members, and we're going to go to the podium just to make it simpler for presentation purposes. You have the presentation in front of you as Board of Education members. For our audience, it will appear on the screens in front of you. There were a few extra handouts available also over on the table, but if the administrators participating could join me, it'll just facilitate making this much easier. No one wants to sit in the front row. Patrick, is this on? Thank you. So tonight, Dr. Troyer, Dr. Hamilton, Mr. Emery, Ms. Jenkins, and I are going to go through the results for the 2015-16 local report card issued to New Albany Plain Local School District from the Ohio Department of Education. Our presentation this evening will focus on our results, the commitment to excellence within the school district, our purpose as to why we're here every single day to benefit children, the response that you should begin to expect from the school district related to the results that we will share this evening, and the focus for continuous improvement moving forward within the school district. Thought I heard the scooter. He's not here yet. Mr. McClellan. Let's begin with the purpose of Ohio's local report card. So just for clarification purposes, and I know you have the bullets in front of you, the intent of issuing the report card from the state, despite some recent media attention and some of the confusion that it's actually created, fundamentally goes back to the fact that it's supposed to publicly report on the progress of school districts throughout the state of Ohio in an equalized playing field related to the measures and the expectations of what every student in the state of Ohio should know and be able to do. It provides one measure, and I want to keep emphasizing that because I'm going to tell you it's also one of the cautions. It's one measure of student achievement within the school district. Granted, it's a public measure throughout the state of Ohio, but it is one measure of multiple measures that we use on a daily basis to determine what else we can do to help students learn and grow. The report that's issued from the state focuses on grades 3 through 8, both for reading and mathematics, as well as specific end-of-course exams that were introduced at the high school. You'll recall that the OGT, the Ohio Graduation Test, is being phased out in the state of Ohio, and we're now responsible to take end-of-course exams at the high school level to replace it. It, again, provides the snapshot of school and district performance based upon the annual administration. So tests are administered with the exception of the third grade fall reading test. All tests are in the spring of the academic year for students in grades 3 through 8, as well as students enrolled at the high school and specific end-of-course exams. Cautions. And Paula DeMaria, the new state superintendent, I believe has done a very good job at trying to lead the media in a conversation related to the fact that this is one source of data that in his latest has to be taken with a grain of salt, given the fact that over the last 3 years, there's been multiple changes to the state assessment system. We've had new tests, Park came to town, Park left town. AIR is now here, which is the name of the test that students are testing throughout the state. So we went through multiple different iterations of what the state tests were going to look like. And now, allegedly, we believe the tests will stay the same for next school year. What will change are the benchmarks. So there are specific percentages required for students to demonstrate academic achievement based upon whatever standards are adopted by the State Board of Education. The unfortunate piece right now is the only thing that we absolutely know that's going to be different next year on the report card is that the 116 performance index requirement for gifted will become 117. Everything else beyond that is still subject to adoption by the State Board of Education by March of 2017 in the most recent communications. Technically, under Ohio Revised Code, the State Board has until July 1st annually to decide what the measures are that they're going to publicly report upon. If they wait till July, clearly the school year will be over. Historically, the Accountability Committee has made recommendations in March that then move forward to the State Board of Education to determine the report card. So all we have right now are the latest communications that came out of the Accountability Committee that recommend that the percentages required for minimum passage for proficiency will move to 80%. Many are somewhere between 72% and 80% today, but there could be a 2% to an 8% increase on higher expectations for students pending what the State Board chooses to do. Again, we don't know what that adoption will be, and likely the Accountability Committee will do that in March of 2017. Tonight, for presentation purposes, we're going to walk you through the specific components of the local report card. I'm not going to basically summarize each component here. I'm just telling you that this is the face of the public report card. If you go onto the Ohio Department of Education website and you say, go to the district and find my school district's report card, this is what comes up. There are 6 components that we were publicly graded upon with the local report card, as well as financial data. Must be static. Financial data. So we are going to walk through these components for you this evening and talk about each one before we actually get into the disaggregation of the student data and understanding the rankings that we've created to share with you publicly this evening, as well as for our viewers at home. We're going to begin with Ms. Jenkins for the financial data on the local report card.
Good evening. So the first two, there are only 4 financial slides, by the way, but the first two contain information that we as administrators can see when we log into the Department of Education's website, and then the second two are is information that anyone who goes onto the website to see the report card can.
Look forward.
I know, but I'm afraid that's going to blow up. So the first slide shows that the district spends 70.3% in classroom instruction and then 29.7% in all other areas. And a couple slides later, you're going to see how that compares to similar districts and then, well, comparison districts, and then how it compares to state average. But we wanted to show you what we see. The next slide is spending per pupil. You'll see that at the top it says equivalent expenditure per pupil based on weighted ADM. So the state used to calculate expenditure per pupil based on the one time of year that it capped at the end of the year when it captured our enrollment. Now, because the state has changed that, and that's been a couple of years to several different points of collection, they do a weighted average of the students who are here, how long they've been here, kindergarten students, et cetera. So both of those numbers, so you can see that in last fiscal year, our expenditure per pupil was $11,900, and the year before, the current year is $10,309. This is not information. You'll see just the expenditure per pupil for the current year on the website. If you're just going in as a community member, this is again what we see when it's published when we log in. So this is one of the slides that actually anyone can see. If you go on right now, you can see that we are 27 out of 109 comparison districts in the amount of money that we spend in the classroom. So there are a couple of different things you're going to see. Similar district is the similar district that the state of Ohio uses about 20 different variables to compute what districts are similar to us. They use income, they use whether it's urban, how many urban kind of students you have in your districts. They use property. There are 20 different variables. That says those, and socioeconomic, those kinds of districts are most like us. Comparison districts are just those districts that have between 2,500 and 4,999 students. Nothing special there, just the number of students that we have. So of those 109 comparison schools, we rank 27th in the amount that we spend. But you can see, it's hard to see on the graph, but you can see that we're pretty close. State average is about 68, 69%. We're at 70. Comparison districts are around 69% as well. Then you can also see on that slide our expenditure per pupil compared to the state average. So 8,711 is the state average expenditure per pupil as compared to our 10,309. The next slide is one that you can also find. So this is where you'll see the difference between similar districts, so the fewer little dots on the graph, and then the comparison districts. When you're on the website, if you hover over any of those dots, you'll see the district, their performance index, and their expenditure per pupil. And on this slide, New Albany is in red. Questions on finance? Not very much more information is available yet. Typically, the state releases all of the financial data February, March timeframe. So this is as much as we can get to. Even when we log in, there's not a data dump that we can get yet.
Thank you.
So before we continue with each individual component to unpack it and give you information related to the achievement either at the district level or at the building level, I want to first start with owning the results. We've had this conversation within the leadership team. It's an expectation for conversation as an example from the building principals to the classroom teachers as we're unpacking the data and really going through the high-level overview of each of the 6 components that ultimately results in a letter grade for the report card. The one that's not pictured here because it's not rated at the district level is K through 3 literacy. So it is the 6th component, but we have less than 5% of our students at the kindergarten level as a district, so we don't qualify for a letter grade at the district level. But for the other ones, specifically for achievement, as a general overview, I would tell you it's solid performance when you look at the statewide, ultimately, test results of all school districts throughout the state of Ohio. Although we received a letter grade of a B, it is solid. There are only 2 school districts out of 608 in the entire state of Ohio that received an overall letter grade of an A on the report card. Every other school district is a B, C, D, F. There were 2 A's out of 608 in the state of Ohio. We received a B. So it's solid performance, but I will tell you our expectation is we continue to learn from the results as we disaggregate the student data to determine how we ultimately move forward. For gap closure, we did receive an F as a school district. Bottom line, it's unacceptable performance overall in this gap measure. Specifically, we're helping some of the most at-risk student subgroups within the school. There are 10 different subgroups that are rated by the Ohio Department of Education. So the F clearly is a message that we have to do more to help all subgroups succeed. While some subgroups showed adequate and or improved performance, overall, as a school district, the F is unacceptable. For progress, which is the growth measure, we did receive a B. Growth of students with disabilities in the lowest 20% was strong, but some students did not demonstrate at least a year's worth of growth on specific tests. So this is where we have to disaggregate the data. And if you'll recall from the board retreat, I used the example of students by race, ethnicity, and or socioeconomic status were 3 specific subgroups in our school district that we have to do something to pay more attention to. We have to look at the quality or types of services that are being offered to those students and determine what we can do differently to ensure that they have greater levels of success moving forward. For graduation rate, this is strong. I will be honest and tell you it's strong across the entire state of Ohio based upon the calculation. 87%, unlike the first measure, 87% of schools in the state of Ohio actually received an A for graduation. So clearly, students are graduating within 4 or 5 years. This is a very strong measure across the state of Ohio, and clearly for us, given that we're in the high 90th percentiles, it is strong for us as well as the school district. Prepared for success, we received a B as the component grade. Again, we'll unpack it further to give you specific information, but this represents the College Credit Plus participation, the ability for students to earn college credit while enrolled in high school, either through College Credit Plus, taking AP exams, participating in AP, and ultimately SAT and ACT performance, or the ability to earn the honors diploma. So several prepared for success measures. The intent of the state of Ohio to demonstrate this data is that we actually graduate students who are college and career ready and actually can enter college or their career workforce and be very successful from the first day they entered the door. So overall, as a school district, we did receive a B. Dr. Troyer.
So next we'll look at each of the components that we just summarized, and we'll look at them in a little bit more depth. The first one we'll look at is achievement. So there's an overall grade for achievement for the school district. This is at the district level, and it consists of 2 items. First, the performance index. And the way the performance index is calculated is it takes every student in the district that took a test. And then based on their performance level, whether it's accelerated, advanced, proficient, basic, they get a weighting for that grade. So each level has a different weight. So in the end, every student's performance is counted in the performance index. The indicators met is the other component of this achievement measure. And as you can look on the right side of the page there, we met 25 out of 30 indicators. The 5 we did not meet are 4th grade reading, 7th grade math, 8th grade reading, physical science, and geometry. And in terms of indicators met, as Superintendent Sawyers indicated, next year this will be even more challenging to meet because we anticipate that the percentage required to meet that indicator will be higher for all 25 or for all 30 of the indicators. On the performance index, you can see that our percentage was 81.5%. The performance index is calculated on 120 points total. So our district earned 97.8 performance index points, and so we received a B at 81.5%. And on the next slide, you can see how that appears on the report card. It has a summary of the achievement component. As I indicated, both the performance index, which counts for 75% of this component grade, and also the indicators met, which counts for 25% of this component grade. So I think the reason that they're so strong on the performance index is that each and every student counts in some way. And so it provides an incentive for districts to work with each and every student. Moving on then to gifted students, this is not considered a component on the report card that's ultimately going to be rolled up into an overall grade, but for this year and in future years, there will be a statement of whether the gifted indicator was met or not met. And you can see that the school district did meet the indicator this year. There are three parts that go into the gifted indicator. First is the value added grade. So how much did our gifted kids grow in a year's worth of time? A C means that on average, our gifted kids grew a year in a year. So a C is expected growth. A B is above expected, and then an A is way beyond that yet. As Mr. Sawyers indicated, our performance index for gifted students only was 116.344. We expect that to be 117 next year. This was the second highest result in Franklin County for PI for gifted students.
Impressive.
And then the third piece in the gifted indicator is the gifted inputs. Gifted inputs include things like how many kids on a percentage basis are identified as gifted in your district. And so we have a high percentage, so that helps us. Then what percent of those kids who are identified as gifted actually receive services specifically for gifted students? And then there are other inputs as well in terms of the type of programming available for gifted kids that all get rolled into this final number of 79 for us, and that means that we met the gifted inputs part. So overall, we met the gifted indicator, and in fact, in looking at the data statewide, we were 22nd in the state on the gifted indicator. Going on then to the next component that was also listed at the beginning, our overall component grade for progress was a B. And you can see that there are 4 different sections that comprise this component. All of them are based on value added. So all of them are based on whether the kids grew at least a year's worth of growth in a year's time. And for those of us who've been looking at these for a while, those green, yellow, red boxes just flash out for us really easily where our areas are that we really need to pay attention. So the first component, the first piece of the progress component is overall. So for every student in math, language arts, science, social studies in grades 4 through 8, and some end of course exams, overall, how did we do? So our overall grade was a C. So on average, our kids grew a year for a year's worth of schooling. But if you look over on the chart, you can see a little bit more detail. And of course, we're going even beyond this level of detail as we try to look at what happened and what we can do to improve. So in English language arts for the entire district, we had a 3.88, which is the dark green, which is the highest category that you can receive. But then as you look on over, you can see for social studies, it would have been the equivalent of a C. We had a year's worth of growth for a year's worth of schooling. In science as a district overall, we did not. We did not have sufficient student growth. And then overall, all tests, we had on average a year's worth of growth for each student. In addition to looking at all students, they also look at gifted students, which is very similar to the gifted indicator that I just talked about. Then they look at students in the lowest 20% in achievement. And this one is a little confusing because it's not our lowest 20%, but in the whole state of Ohio, they identify the 20% of students that are the lowest. And then of those lowest 20%, they look at the ones that are here in New Albany. And then they look at how much they grew. And you can see that we actually got an A in that area. So for those low performing students, we were able to show good, solid growth. Likewise, with students with disabilities, we got an A in that area. So we were really pleased with the growth that those students with disabilities showed. So as I indicated, our overall component grade in progress is a B, which is very solid, but there are areas within that that we have to delve deeper and figure out what we need to do to improve in sub areas. Our next component that we're going to look at is gap closing. This one is really a challenging one for all districts, and as you can see by our component grade of F, it's a challenging one for our district as well. This one focuses on the expectations for growth for all subgroups, and the bar charts that you can see there line up to this vertical line, which is the goal where they should all be. So you can see the gaps that we have for many of our subgroups, whether they be racial groups, ethnic groups, socioeconomically disadvantaged groups. So we can see the areas that we have where we have work to do. The next component is graduation rate, and we received an A in this area. It's both a 4-year graduation rate and a 5-year graduation rate. This has been an area of strength for the district, and we anticipate it will continue to be so. In K-3 literacy, we actually did not get a report on that component because of our kindergarten students, less than 5% were identified as struggling. So when you have such a low percentage, the state makes the decision not to report on that area. K-3 literacy is still a very important area for us and one that we pay a lot of attention to. We have, of course, the 3rd grade reading guarantee for students to be promoted to 4th grade. Last year, all students but one who had been a move-in during that year were promoted and did meet the 3rd grade reading guarantee. But we still have areas where we need to work to be sure that the subgroups are performing at the same level as everyone else where they should be. So while not reported, still a big area of focus for us. And then the final component that we were reported on is prepared for success. And this is a new one, and it's very involved and complex and has lots of components. The major components are listed here. So you can see ACT participation. Our district's participation rate was almost 88%, which is very high. And then the second one is the remediation-free score for ACT in both math and English. In other words, students who get these scores when they get to college do not have to take remedial courses. SAT participation is there, SAT remediation free, honors diploma, an industry recognized credential. That's for career technical programs, and we don't have very many students in those programs at all. So you can see that we had a low percentage there. Advanced placement participation and scoring, dual enrollment credit, which is college credit plus. And then there are also some others that are not listed here because there are just too many to list all of them, but they look at whether kids enrolled in college within 2 years of graduation from high school, whether they graduated from college within 6 years. So they looked at our 2009 graduates to see if they had graduated within 6 years. They looked at course taking patterns in middle school and high school. Are students taking the courses they need to be able to successfully graduate? So there are a number of others that are not weighted as heavily that also show up in this component. But as I indicated, that's an overall component grade of B. And so now Mr. Sawyers will help us look at how that compares to some of our comparison districts.
Thank you, Dr. Troyer. Great job. We'd like to begin with Franklin County. We've had several parent requests related to my parent letter that went home asking if you didn't dive into all of the information that was available on the ODE website, can you put together a consolidated chart that shows the New Albany Plain Local School District against the Franklin County and or the similar school districts from the state of Ohio. So we've done that and include them in the presentation this evening that will also be posted on our website. So in Franklin County, we are the 5th highest of 16 school districts that have public reporting for the local report card. And I want to call your attention to it because I think it's significant. When you look at the rankings, we are 64th in the state of Ohio, so that's what the 64 means. You'll see it on the next slide again, and you'll see it on my summary. We're 64th out of 608 public school districts in the state of Ohio. When you look at the other schools that are ahead of us, Bexley, Dublin, Arlington, and Grandview, you see their respective ratings. There's a significant, I'm going to basically call us a tier group. So the 5 school districts, the 4 of them plus us, I consider a tier group based upon our current academic achievement or performance levels, because there's a significant drop when you go to the number 6 on the list in the ranking in the state of Ohio and the performance index on the overall academic achievement. So there is something to be said with comparing, and we typically do go after these school districts in the conversations with our community or in the data that we actually pull across the entire school district, because honestly, everyone asks us, well, how did you do against Arlington, Dublin, Bexley, or Grandview? So it is the common question that we do get, and we do fall within that first tier group. Right now, we're number 5, and we need to continue to improve. I would expect next year we will be higher in Franklin County. Similar school districts. This is determined by the Ohio Department of Education. So there's different terminologies. Becky talked about a comparison group of 109. That's for schools between 2,500 and 4,999 students. The similar school districts are another group that were actually put in, and the easiest way to describe these, using the terminology from the department, these are the neighborhood school districts that are most like us. So where else can you go in the state of Ohio and find the demographic, the education, the population, the student enrollment, the median income, the land value associated to the New Albany Plain local schools? So, and in the chart, I've tried to give you, because you're going to see, I'm going to come back to this when we get to the benchmarks towards the latter part of the presentation. There are rankings within the current achievement levels in the state of Ohio. So I'm going to use Solon because they're one of the 2 school districts that received an A on the local report card in the state. Solon is ranked number 1, and then you can see the information I provided from expenditure per pupil, their current performance index, which again is the achievement level. How well did students do on specific assessments? The percentage, the letter grade, and then the rest of the data that I represent there related specifically to the academic achievement levels on each test. We continue through the list. So there's 20 schools that are similar to us, plus the New Albany Plain local schools. Presently, we're ranked 64th, and we have a per pupil expenditure of $10,310. Our performance index was 97.835 points this year for 81.5% to get a B. And again, you can see how we compare. And generally, outside of the Franklin County schools, when you look at the list, these are the schools that we typically get asked about. Mrs. Kalinowski has a history with Indian Hills, and that's one of the school districts that our families in the community ask us about. Well, how do we compare? And that even came up at the last PTO meeting a week ago. Well, what do other school districts do? This data is important from a department perspective to try to help us understand. And again, I'm going to use Solon as number 1, Indian Hill as number 7, Granville as number 11. There's opportunities for us to partner and learn what are other school districts doing in areas that we're not performing as well as, or if they're outperforming us for a specific reason, what are they doing? It's an opportunity to have a curriculum conversation. It's an opportunity to talk about pedagogy or the types of professional development that are offered to classroom teachers. So there are other schools in the state that we clearly can learn from, and it's an opportunity, and that's how I perceive it. Because we're number 64, the expectation and aspiration has to be that we continuously improve. And you'll see in the benchmark recommendations I'm going to give you this evening based upon our continued conversation since the board retreat, that I've tried to qualify those into percentages and actual rankings for us moving forward. To help frame the conversation, we've gone through each component and actually given you the current rankings by the Ohio Department of Education. Again, achievement is the most important related to actual student performance on the state assessments. We are number 64 out of 608, and again, have opportunity to continuously improve. For the number of percent of standards met, that was our 25 out of 30. We're number 38 out of 608. For the progress measure, which is growth, this is the one that we can't wait for 2 weeks to pass. In the 2nd to 3rd week of October, the department will actually release individualized student level data related to growth. We currently do not have access to that data that we need to continue to mine to understand. But right now we're 352 for the level of growth that's actually happened related to the progress metric. For gap closing, and although we received an F, this puts it into some context. We did get an F as a school district for gap closing, but we're rated 87th out of 608, even with the F. So what does that then mean as you unpack this? This is where it gets very, very complicated. You can't take the letter grade on its face value and not understand the rest of the story behind it. We were not rated for K-3 literacy. For 4-year graduation rate, we're number 55, and for 5-year graduation, we're number 60. And again, for the prepared for success component, Specifically, on the next page, we've broken down the ACT. We're 17th out of 607 for participation, 16th for actually having students score remediation free, clearly indicating that they're college and career ready. We're 19th in the state related to the mean score of 25. For the SAT, we're number 8 for the number of students participating in the state. We're number 10 related to the percent of students that actually score remediation free on the SAT exam. And we're number 188 related to the mean score of 1676 on the specific sections. For AP, we're number 15th in the state for the number of students participating. And again, I will remind you, and this even came up through our teacher speaker at the last meeting, our students, we want access and opportunity to the AP curriculum. Presently within the school district, it is not a requirement to sit for the AP exam. So this number, being number 15, represents even the students that do not currently sit for the exam. If every student in the school district did sit, our ranking obviously would look different.
Michael, why is the total 607 districts in some cases and 608 in others?
That's a good question, and the answer I would give you is the N size has to be greater than 5 in any specific section. So hypothetically, there could be 4 students in a place called Put-in-Bay, Ohio, in a specific test, or they could be taking the ACT. They don't have more than 5 kids in a section, they will not count, they're not calculated. So you have to have at least 5 kids in any specific area. So it could be, and I don't know this because I didn't go through all 608 schools to find it, I would tell you it could be Put-in-Bay as an example.
Okay, thank you.
Honors diploma, we're number 12th in the state out of the 607 with 42.7% of our seniors actually earning an honors diploma from New Albany High School. Again, I think the rankings are important because they put things into context beyond the letter grade, because the F on the gap closing, although it's clearly an opportunity, means something completely different when we look at our ranking within the state. To continue forward, we're going to go into the building level report cards. For a brief overview, we'd like to begin with Mr. Emery, the Director of Elementary Education. Scott?
Thank you, Superintendent Sawyers. Our first elementary school is the K-1, and the K-1 doesn't have any assessed grade levels. The state assessments begin in 3rd grade, so you'll see not rated on all the different criteria that make up this part of the report card. That's not to say data isn't important at the K-1. I know Principal Unger meets regularly with all of our teachers to review reading data and math data to make sure they're getting the best opportunities at the K-1. It's just not rated at this point in time in the state report card. This is interesting because in the 20 or so years that the state's been releasing state report cards, this is the first time in New Albany's history that has had 2 different elementary schools serving the same grades being reported out. And this was of concern to me and the principals as well, but kudos to Principal Smith and Principal Nowak for their time with their staffs and making sure that having 2 separate report cards has not become divisive for our faculty. The strength of New Albany teachers is collaboration and just those relationships that for multiple decades, many of them have formed. We don't want to have them starting to work against each other, as sometimes can happen in school districts that have multiple elementary schools. So by meeting with their staffs, we feel really confident that we're going to see great improvement this year on our report cards when they come out a year from now. But starting with New Albany 2.5, you can see that they had a performance index that rated a B. They were over 100, which is very impressive, and they met 80% of the indicators. The 2 indicators not met were 4th grade reading, and even though the initial data that came from the state said that the gifted indicator was met, the progress grade for gifted took them down and lost that indicator, but 80% still results in a B. For gap closing, I think Mr. Sawyers and Dr. Choi have already addressed some of the issues that are involved with that, and the elementary is not immune for those issues that need to be addressed with gap closing. K-3 literacy for both schools received an F. Obviously that's of concern, but unfortunately I don't think this measure is truly measuring K-3 literacy. If you look at the 3rd grade reading guarantee passage rates, they're at 99.7%. K-3 literacy is measuring simply the number of kids that are put on a reading improvement and monitoring plan that were then exited from that plan the following year. So in this case, some districts will over-identify students knowing that they can be exited the following year in order to inflate this measure. One issue that we ran into is that for students who did not pass the third grade reading test, if we did not have them on a reading improvement and monitoring plan, then we had multiple point deductions for that. And that's one thing we'll fix this year, but we certainly don't want to create stress and concern among the parents of our third graders that their children are at risk for not passing third grade if in fact we don't think that's a legitimate concern. So we're still looking at that measure, but we don't believe that actually measures K-3 literacy. For progress, you'll see a component grade of C for the 2-5. As Mr. Sawyers alluded to, we don't have the data yet, and we don't expect to get it for several weeks to really dig into what resulted in those grades. One question we really have at the elementary level is with the level of math acceleration that we do, are those students included in this measurement? We're not sure yet. We won't know till the state releases student by student data here in a couple of weeks. But we have reason to believe that for students that skip an entire grade level in a subject, that the state doesn't calculate a progress grade for those students because they don't have enough students in the pool to measure what they should have received as a score in their state test. But we'll be able to report out on that at a future board meeting when we know for sure.
Those kids who are in the like compact math and accelerated courses, are they coded as gifted?
Yes, if they have a written acceleration plan, then they should have been counted as part of the PI score in that plus part.
Okay.
But yes, every student who's been accelerated would have needed to have a gifted score of 95th percentile or more in math specifically in order to qualify for that type of advancement.
So just so I'm clear, like if there's a child in 6th grade and they're taking 7-8 compact math, you're saying they may not have been counted in the 6th grade results?
Oh, they definitely weren't included. Repeat that question. If they were taking the 7-8 compact,
So
they
like
would not have been counted in the 6th grade passage rate. They would have been counted in the 8th grade passage rate because they took the 8th grade math test.
Okay.
Our concern is when calculating growth, if they would have taken, for example, the 4th grade math test as a 4th grader, then we're accelerated and maybe taking a 6th grade math test as a 5th grader, where they dropped from this equation because the state doesn't calculate when you skip an entire year of testing.
Okay.
So we'll be able to address that more directly at a future board meeting when we know for sure. The state just hasn't released that data yet.
Okay.
For sure.
Thank you.
And then for New Albany 2-8 elementary school at the learning facility, very similar PI score to their colleagues at the 2-5. They did meet the 4th grade proficiency indicator and the gifted indicator due to that progress score. That's why you see an A for indicators met, and then similar grades for gap closing and K-3 literacy, and then the progress results as listed. So overall, I can't say enough about the great work the principals have been doing communicating this with their staffs, and we've really enjoyed just kind of working on the plans for what we plan to put in place this year to have better reports for you a year from now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to report about the middle school and the high school results. And at the middle school, as you, whoops, I need to, there we go. At the middle school, our achievement component grade was a C. And that, as Dr. Troyer pointed out, is comprised of the performance indicator, which was a B, and the indicators that we met, which was a D. And I can go into a little more detail on those. Regarding the indicators that we met 7 out of 11 for 63.6%. And 6th grade, and that was a D. The 6th grade math was an area of concern. We did not meet 6th grade math. We had 64.9, 74% was the standard. We did not meet 7th grade math. And again, we were at 36.8%, 74% was the standard. And we did not meet 8th grade reading. And 62.5% were proficient, and 74% was the standard. So we did not meet 6th grade math, 7th grade, math, and 8th grade reading. Now, 8th grade reading was very typical across the state. I don't know if you saw the Dispatch article yesterday about that, but that was like 96% of districts in the state did not pass the 8th grade reading test. So something is going on there. So that was something that we're concerned about. And only 47% in the whole state were proficient in the 8th grade reading. So there's something going on there. Then also, if you look at the middle school indicators, we had high school Algebra 1. We have 253 students who are taking high school Algebra 1, and we had a 97.6% proficiency rate there. Then we also had geometry. We had 100% there. We had 88 students taking geometry for high school credit, and we had 100% of those students passed that standard. Then when we look at the performance index, which is the other part of the component grade for this indicator, or for this area, we look at the performance index. We had a 97.1, which was a B, 97.1 points, 80.9% for a B. And so you take the B and the D, and those are weighted, as Dr. Troy pointed out too. And so we came up with a B for that. So so that's how we. We came up with a C. Took a D and a B, came up with a C for the component grade. Then for gap closing, it's kind of very similar to the rest of the district. We had an F in gap closing, and again, they're looking at annual measurable objectives there, the AMO, and we did not do well in either. It's based on English language arts and math. We only had a total of 29.3 points there for the middle school, so we're working on that with our subgroups as we are in the whole district. As far as gifted is concerned, our gifted indicator, we did not meet that at the middle school. Our gifted inputs, as Dr. Troy pointed out, there are 3 areas there. Gifted inputs were met, but not the gifted performance index at the middle school level. Value added was also met for the gifted at the middle school, but not the performance index. As far as the K-3 literacy, that was not rated because we didn't have enough students. Progress is the growth. For value added, we had an F overall, and again, it was our science. We had science as an issue, but we also had 6th grade math, 7th grade math, and 8th grade reading. So those were, again, our areas which we've been dealing with the whole time. Then we also had a C in gifted, which meant that they met their expected growth. Students with disabilities was a B, and then our lowest 20%, which is how we're rated against other students in the lowest 20% in the state of Ohio, was a C. Graduation rate was not rated at the middle school. No students were graduating there, and prepared for success was not rated at the middle school. Then when we move on to the high school, as far as the high school goes, we had, again, its indicator achievement is based, we received a C, and it's based on indicators as well as performance index. As far as indicators go, we met 10 out of the 14 for a C, 71.4%. Physical science, we did not meet. There were only 10 students who took the physical science test, and only 4 were proficient. So that was kind of an anomaly, I guess we might say. Physical science will not be offered as a testing area. It's not going to be offered from now on in the state. So these were probably students who were move-ins or students who needed to retake the physical science. But so that we did not meet that indicator. We also did not meet the Algebra 1 indicator at the high school level. We had 162 students who took the Algebra 1 test. We had a 53.1% passage rate. 72% was the standard. So we did not meet that. Geometry, we had 295 students take the test at the high school level, and we had 66.4% passage. 80% was the standard, and so we did not meet geometry. So we have physical science, algebra, and geometry, and then the other indicator that goes with these on this achievement level is the gifted indicator. We did not meet the gifted indicator at the high school as well.
When
Yes.
when the kids are taking, for example, Algebra 1 and Geometry at the high school level, are they taking it at the normal year that they're expected to take it?
Yes, yes. That's exactly, because we have so many students who are taking it at the.
Accelerated, yeah. Okay.
Pretty much those kids are taking it 9th and 10th, 11th grade.
So that's what that metric is, though, that's not being met, is the kids who are taking it at the normal pace.
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Thank you.
And there are probably students who, maybe are struggling a little bit with those areas.
Okay.
And then, so we have a C there because we had a C in the attendance index, a C in the indicators, and the component grade then was an overall C. Then regarding our, the next area, we had, looking at gap closing, again, it's a common theme, we have an F for gap closing. And again, we did not, our math and English language arts scores were not where they needed to be. We only have, we didn't have enough points to meet the gap closing. K3 literacy was not rated, we didn't have enough students to measure that. Progress was an A. This was a really bright point for the high school. We had overall A, and overall gifted A, and then students with disabilities an A, and the lowest 20% in achievement was an A. Graduation rate, Dr. Troy already reported on that, was an A. We had students for the 4 year, 97.8%, and the 5 year was 98.8%, which means they graduated in 4 years with the cohort group, like where they started in 9th grade. 4 years later, do they graduate? So that's a real bright spot with an A there. And then prepared for success, again, Dr. Troy putting down all those ACT, SAT, vacation free, the dual enrollment, all of that, previously. So that's the school high school.
And at the high school level, how are kids identified as gifted?
Pretty much, again, if you have a written education plan,
Okay.
and it's probably going to be based on, for the most, at that level, you kind of distinguish yourself based on the courses you take, so AP, honors, but again, they have to have either a written education plan, WEP, or a WAP, a written acceleration plan.
Okay. I didn't know if you still use those at the high school level.
Yeah, but it's pretty much based on the courses that they take, so the AP, honors.
Okay. Thank you.
Can we clarify something that Mrs. Kalinowski asked about? Particularly, and I'm just going to use algebra as the topic.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have 7th graders that are taking algebra, so it's not, so they're obviously advanced.
Right.
Their test scores are not included in these numbers, correct?
Yes, they're reported in with the middle school. They
Right.
were reported, remember I said they're reported with the middle school.
Okay.
Not
So-
the high school.
and so
Well, they get high school credit.
Right. So
We're
we're
talking about, I think Mr. Emmett is talking about for value, sorry,
No, go
we're
ahead.
talking about value added, the growth measure, that's where that, comes in.
okay. So
Where do they get
where do they
captured?
get captured in this data?
The
For
indicators.
achievement, right?
Yeah, the achievement indicator.
On the middle school report.
So on the middle school report?
On the middle school report.
Okay, under achievement.
Yes, under achievement, under the indicators. And you don't have all that in front of you, I read it.
Right.
So that you have that information.
And they'd be gifted.
So that's just clustered in as gifted. It's not, so there's no algebra score for all the students who took algebra last year.
Yes, there is. For the middle school, there's an algebra 1, if you look at their.
Okay, so I'd have to look at the full form.
Right.
Okay,
Your
okay.
notebook, which you can find
Yes.
later.
Yes.
Later?
In the middle school tab, and there actually will be a test labeled on middle school as algebra.
Okay.
And a test labeled as geometry, but wherever the student goes to school is where his or her test counts.
Okay.
So could you then say to yourself, which I'm doing, and you tell me if I'm right or I'm wrong to say it. For high school achievement, the scores that we received in physical science, algebra 1, and geometry are not necessarily indicative of the high school courses or the effectiveness of the high school courses, right? It may be indicative of the fact that we are accelerating so many other students. Is that a fair assumption?
That is a very fair assumption, yes, absolutely.
If you're typically developing student at age-appropriate grade level, so I am a 7th grader, and I'm taking 7th grade math because I'm in 7th grade. I'm not accelerated, I'm just a 7th grader taking the courses that I'm expected to take. So it gives us an opportunity then to talk about, of those 120 plus 7th graders that were not accelerated to take 8th grade math, algebra 1, or geometry as a 7th grader. I'm a typically developing 7th grade student. Why did only 39.4% of the students have proficient or above on the exam? So we have to step back from that and understand what are the supports that are in place, how are we working with the students, why aren't they progressing as other students have, and understand that. Likewise, because we've had the conversation, this is where you get into the data mining of it, but to use your example of algebra and geometry at the high school, those are typically developing age-appropriate students taking algebra and geometry at the high school because they've gone through the progression. I had 7th grade math, I had 8th grade math as a freshman, I'm taking algebra 1, as a sophomore, I'm taking geometry. It's age-appropriate. We have students that struggled there, and we have to unpack that to understand it. Whereas, in the example Dr. Hamilton gave you, 100% of the middle school students
I think that's a very, very important point to make. We have made a commitment to compacting and to accelerating kids as a way to serve our gifted population, really. And we could game the system, if you will, and positively raise our scores if we eliminated that, because then you've got a group of that is going to fall out along a bell curve somewhere, correct?
Right. And we're
So we have to
game the system. We're actually having kids have access to age-appropriate curriculum to meet their individual learning needs, and not play the game of John is a 7th grader who is taking algebra, who would blow this test away if we gave him the 7th grade test. We're choosing not to give him the 7th grade math test. We're giving John the algebra test because that's the curriculum John was exposed to, and we need to know what John learned. So to be fair, we need to test you in algebra. We're not gaming the system, but that's where there's fallacies related to understanding everything, that we're making educational choices to be in the best interest of the child and not about the points you get on a specific element of the report card. That's not what this is about. This is about learning and student achievement. And Dr. Mr. Emery referred to it related to the value-added piece of progress. In 2 weeks, when we get access to the rest of that, then that's when we get the rest of the story. How did each kid grow with the content that they were exposed to? We don't have access to that level of data yet. We need it, because that's the rest of the story to understand what happened with acceleration. Because right now, we don't know.
Well, if I could just finish up here, I think what that means to me is it just highlights again that this is one piece of data. It's one valuable piece of data, but it's not the be-all and the end-all, because we have gone into this understanding that our scores could be higher, but we're choosing to do what, in your best judgment, is best for kids, which I think is very commendable. And I mean, I think that's the right choice. So thank you.
I just want to piggyback on Laura's observation and ask a question. So I think, I don't know if we asked when we were at Indian Hill and looked at this, but, you know, I think our peer groups are probably doing accelerating too. Do you know?
I apologize. Can you repeat that?
If we're looking at our peer group schools that we're trying to compare ourselves to, they're not gaming the system either. They are trying to accelerate kids, give them the opportunities they're ready for at the time they're ready for them.
The best of the best are doing what's right for kids and putting students first, academically, social, emotionally, to meet their outcomes that are necessary. So that's the choice that we've made. I can't speak to all schools. I would presume everyone has the right intention, but there are opportunities within the system to figure out how to get more points. And we're not playing the points game. We're playing, we want kids to have access to the curriculum that meets his or her needs on a daily basis. And thereafter, we need to give you the assessment that measures whether or not you did or did not perform or learn or grow based upon the content you were exposed to. So we're making the deliberate choice, and I would presume the school districts that are the best of the best that we're comparing ourselves to are doing that as well.
Okay. And then my second question is, for the students who are taking coursework at grade level, like on track at their grade level, are we offering the exact same class, the exact same teacher, everything that kind of that accelerated kid had, it's just at a different year?
Yes. We are, it's the same Algebra 1 class, it's the same geometry. Now, you know, if it's honors, Algebra honors geometry, that's different.
Okay.
But Algebra 1 and geometry are the same at the middle school and the high school. And now we do also have an area for, or a course for students who aren't quite ready for Algebra 1. So we divide it into like 2 years. And so we try to support students in that way.
Okay.
You're actually leading into the next section of the presentation, so it'll make sense to you in just a second with some of the comments I'm going to make.
Okay, thank you.
If I could try to make sure I understand the answer, the question and answer. So 7th grade kids taking 7th grade math get a curriculum.
Correct.
4th graders who are taking 7th grade math, do they get the same, they get the same curriculum? Same teachers? Are they in the 7th? No.
They're
Okay,
not.
so
They're in a compact class, so they have the art of teaching, which is the pedagogy of the teacher for instruction that I'm going to talk about. So that's the responsibility of the classroom teacher. That's the art of the teacher.
Okay.
The guaranteed viable curriculum that I'm going to talk about is what the kid has to be guaranteed they're going to receive. So the 7th grade math curriculum is the 7th grade math curriculum. Regardless of my 7th grade math teacher, I get access to that curriculum. How the teacher brings it to life to support me and my specific learning needs is the responsibility of the teacher. That help?
Yes.
And we're putting in lots of supports.
And now we're evaluating were they the right supports. Did they work
Right.
for some and not for others? And if so, why? We need to understand that, because I will be honest, when you disaggregate, I know I gave you a voluminous amount of data on Saturday that some of you like, wow, this is a lot. But you can even get to the level of boys and girls for gender purposes, and how do they outperform or underperform on a specific assessment, and what does that mean? And then you get into the 10 subgroups. So this is the fun that the leadership team and the principals are having, is to try to figure out all these moving pieces and parts and all that stuff that I sent you. We just had a 2-hour meeting before the board meeting to go through it. So we're working through it as fast as we can, because at the end of the day, we need to empower the teachers with the information to understand what we can do differently to better support the kids, or what's working and we have to keep doing it.
Thank you.
So I know we went through a lot related to the data associated to the report cards, and let's talk about the so, what, and the why. So what's the purpose? When you put this all in the context of the school district, we have to try to make it make sense. We're going to start with the purpose. And again, it's to create a culture of accountability that achieves the best academic and developmental outcomes for each student. You clearly recognize that because it's the work of the Board of Education. I'm going to start with the context of thinking about that purpose, and I did this conversation with the teachers to start the school year. So we really framed the conversation to talk about why are we here? How do we best create a culture that achieves the best academic and developmental outcomes for each student? And what will we do? And I put in the context of really leading with focus, regardless of your role within the school district, from classroom teacher to bus driver to custodian to principal, you have to lead on a daily basis with focus to understand how you contribute to this greater system and organization of why, how, and what within the context of our schools. So I created a bullseye. It's the easiest way for me to try to describe this to people to understand the work of the school district, and this is the lens of how we put all the pieces and parts together to understand the frame. This is the daily expectation that any parent and or employee of the school district should understand within our school district. We start with bullseye center is why are we here? Then we go to ultimately the supports that are put in place to understand how will we accomplish the specific goals we established for why, and then what will we do to ensure our goals are met. And try to frame this in a very simplified way to clearly understand it. Fundamentally, first and foremost, the why. Student achievement, growth, and well-being. Very simple to understand. Every employee in the school district ultimately has heard me talk at length, and now it's being reinforced at the building level through classroom visits and conversations of curriculum within specific grade levels, departments, or teams, both SLCs or team leaders, to talk about student achievement, growth, and well-being. It's fundamentally why we're here every single day. Then you get into the conversation of, well, how are we going to achieve student achievement, growth, and well-being? How are we going to do that? There's 4 major areas: curriculum, assessment, instruction, and social and emotional well-being of students. Frames the work of the school district. Everything we do on a daily basis touches one of these 4 areas, and it's fundamentally the driver behind the work of the school district. So we start with the foundation of curriculum. What is it we expect students to know and be able to do? Assessment, how are you going to know that they actually know it? Instruction, what are you going to do if they come to class armed that they already know the information or they're struggling within your classroom? And the social and emotional supports, because if remember, it's not just about content and pedagogy. Our kids bring issues or have needs or are growing every single day within the school district, and we have to understand what are their social and emotional needs. Social and emotional needs can be barriers to learning. I can come to school hungry. I can come to school with a headache. I can come to school sick. I come to school and I had a bad night, or my dad lost his job, mom got a new job, my parents are getting divorced. All those things are barriers to somehow impact kids. We have to understand their kids. Kids need support. We need benefit ultimately by having a conversation within the school district related to the whole child. That's what the social emotional element means. We put into the context, again, the question is the what. So in the curriculum world, what is it we expect our students to learn? It goes back to the guaranteed and viable curriculum. What is it we expect kids to know and be able to do on a daily basis? That's fundamentally the question of curriculum. And I will tell you, we recently did this graphic. I explained it to the PTOs because we plan on rolling this out to our parent population just to see how the PTO would receive it. They said, you know what, this makes sense. I actually like the fact that you're telling me, like at the parent conference or a curriculum night, I should ask my classroom teacher for curriculum purposes, what is it you expect my student to learn? What is 4th grade math? Teachers will tell you. What does my student need to learn in 7th grade science? Teachers will tell you. The high school is called a syllabus. It's the reality of it. But that's what we expect students to know or ultimately learn within the curriculum. The assessment world, what will we do to know what they have learned? This is the world of common assessments. I will tell you, once you have the guaranteed and viable curriculum that's required, that every student has access to the same curriculum, then we go to the assessment world and have to understand how are you going to assess students to understand that they actually learned the content. We call them common assessments. We're developing them across the school district. This is not an overnight implementation. This is large, heavy lift work that we have to do with classroom teachers. There are common assessments in play across the school campus, but it's an opportunity for continuous growth because we have to develop them within each content area so that it actually aligns to the curriculum. The instruction, this is the art of the classroom teacher. The edu-speak piece related to the terminology is called pedagogy. What's the instruction? And we ask, and this is really, again, arming a parent with a question, because this is what the teachers ultimately have a conversation about. What will we do when some students do not learn? So what are the interventions? What are the supports that are put in place to help kids that struggle? And conversely, what will we do when students already know it? So if Phil walks through the door and Phil already knows the information, Phil should sit through sit and get to get it. Phil should be able to take it to the next level. How do I take Phil deeper? How do I help Phil learn the next thing that he's ready to learn? or Paul, or John, or Debbie, or Laura.
It will be
Any one of you. But those are the questions that ultimately classroom teachers have to face, because the 25 or so kids that are sitting in front of them are not all the same. They might be able to group some likenesses together, but they have to personalize the educational experience to understand what will my instruction do to benefit each child sitting in front of me. And lastly, social emotional. What do we do for students that need socially and emotionally to learn? Again, kids come to school with issues. We can't pretend that they don't, they do. They're all different depending on the age, the type of ultimately issue that the kid's facing. But sooner or later, it becomes dominant or prevalent within the instructional environment. We have to do something to provide those social emotional supports. This becomes really the framework of the work of a school district. This is the continuous improvement graphic of what we have to do to move the district forward to, on a daily basis, ensure that this is happening across the entire K-12 campus. It's not happening by accident. It's happening through a deliberate focus with leadership from the central office to the buildings to the classrooms, where there's a conscious, concerted effort of everyone talking the same language about curriculum, assessment, instruction, and social emotional well-being of kids. And it's fundamentally back to the purpose. Why are we here? Student achievement, growth, and well-being. That's ultimately been the conversation in the school district for the last 6+ weeks. We're permeating it through the work of the school district, and Dr. Sawyers is going to show you a couple specific examples of our response to this in the school district and how it directly applies to the local report card results that you actually heard about this evening. Dr. Sawyers?
Mr. Sawyers, could I just ask you one quick question? How will we know, the board, how will parents know, how will teachers know, how will even the students know that these things are actually happening?
It has to become a public conversation, so we have to develop the reporting systems that's actually going to utilize the data to present that information to you. Leadership's currently having that discussion. We're gathering information from the classroom teachers about formative assessments, what kids are actually doing to, as the precursor to understand what is your current knowledge of it, and then using that data as an example to determine what's the course of my instruction as a classroom teacher. And then we have to take that when the kid actually gets access to the curriculum, I give you the assessment. We need to sit down and audit student work. We need to look at student work to try to understand, why is Marilyn's work better than Michael's work? And why was Marilyn more successful on this activity than mine? That's already happening in classrooms across the school district, but then it has to translate in how are you sharing that information to classrooms from a classroom teacher's perspective to our ultimately parent population. So it is work that the school district has to do. I will tell you there's pockets of excellence across the school campus where teachers do that absolutely every single day, but we want it to become a natural occurrence and not an exception. Going back to Debbie's question about, well, how do I know that my kid gets access to that curriculum? Because it's guaranteed and it's what should happen. And we have to progress monitor that. We need to have those conversations with classroom teachers because it's done, as Mr. Emery said, through collaboration. It's putting the expectation into the system and guaranteeing the kids, we're here with a singular focus, student achievement, student well-being, and ultimately helping you be everything that you can be.
I think this model is really good. This is the second time I've heard you walk through it, and I feel like it gives everyone a common language and a common framework to refer to when you want to ask a question or you want to understand more deeply a certain area of what's going on with your child. I really like this.
Thank you, Dr. Troy.
Thank you, Mr. Sawyers. This next slide really summarizes and lists in clear language all of the things that Mr. Sawyers has just been talking about. So our focus for this year is, first of all, to lead with focus. We read the Mike Schmucker book called Lead with Focus, and it really talks about keeping your focus on those most important critical things and not trying to do everything with all other programs that might come along. So we're really making a concerted effort with that. And then the other thing is that a lot of the rest of the bullets on this page are really being led by our curriculum directors. Dr. Hamilton at the secondary level and Mr. Emily at the elementary level. And it's already making a big difference in terms of what we're able to do. With not having a curriculum department last year and with having some kind of uneven work as we had staff turnover in the previous years, we are finding already that there are gaps. The second bullet, implement guaranteed and viable curriculum. So at some grade levels and some content areas, the teachers have done that over the last few years. They've jointly developed a curriculum for that course for that year, and they are all teaching it. But at other grade levels in some content areas, it's more uneven. So you might see something in one classroom and something else in another. So that's really our focus for this year, is to see where those gaps are. Elementary math is one place where we are starting to really try to get that much more aligned and much more assured that, yes, that same content is being taught at that grade level by all teachers. Then when we have that content identified, we must teach it. We must teach rigorous and standards-aligned curriculum and do it deeply. So we can't just gloss over the surface, we can't brush through it, but we must really teach it deeply. To help with that process, it's very beneficial to develop and use common assessments. And again, this is one where as you look across grade levels and content areas, it's a little uneven. There are departments at the high school and at the middle school and subject areas in the elementary where they have done that work and where they already are all using common assessments, and then each year they refine them. But there are other grade levels where that's not happening. So that's really our focus, to be sure that those aligned curriculum and common assessments are put in place where we have gaps. Then we have to evaluate student work. One of the really good strategies to use with teachers is to analyze the work that students do and to have them do it together. Have examples of work so that you can see anchor examples of the best of the best. And what would be, a failing example of work? What would be in the mid-range? So having teachers talk about that, how they assess is important. And then, of course, based on that, providing intervention, providing enrichment, not having every kid in the class do the same thing because they all happen to be in the same class at the same time, but based on their needs, providing additional intervention and enrichment opportunities. We've got to monitor their student progress regularly. We've been starting to do that with the MAP assessments, and I think we need to continue to find ways to be sure that we're monitoring progress and doing it accurately as it relates to state achievement tests. Conduct classroom walkthroughs as part of our teacher evaluation system. So all teachers have their evaluators or administrators in the district walk through and do observations. We need to analyze data to make decisions based on that data. And as was indicated earlier, we spent 2 hours doing that before the board meeting. And had an external expert come in and look at the data with us and help us identify where are the areas that we need to pay the most attention and have the greatest focus this year, and where are the areas we can celebrate. So we need to continue to do that. We've done it at the district level now as a whole administrative team. Now in each building, they're going to do that for the assessments in those buildings. Finally, we've got to have high expectations. We can't, and I think a great example of this, when we were looking at the data this afternoon, English Language Arts 1 is what it's called on the state assessments, but it's really English 1 at the high school level, but it's in our humanities course. We did extremely well as a district in that, but we have extremely high expectations in that humanities course. And we hear a lot of concerns sometimes about, is it too difficult, is it too rigorous? But then you look at the results we get when we have those kinds of expectations, and it really does pay off.
Number 2, statewide.
Yes, number 2 in the state. And then English 2 also was very high. Anyway, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Sawyers.
English 10 or English 2 is number 24, by the way. Again, rigor. So let's put this into context. That's really where I'm going with rigor. So at the board retreat, we had a conversation related to a commitment to excellence. At the last board meeting, we had a huge conversation related to commitment to excellence. And the charge was, Michael, go out, work on this with leadership, and come back and tell us what you think the next iteration is. So I'm actually giving this to you this evening. It is different from the Saturday morning version because we've continued to work on this through Sunday and then again today, based upon the conversations within the entire leadership team for the data work that we did tonight. So I'm actually presenting to you an updated version publicly and what I think the commitment to excellence should be. And it is that the New Albany Plain Local School District is committed to creating a culture of accountability that achieves the best academic and developmental outcomes for each student. The district aspires by 2021 to be ranked in the top 5%, number 30 or higher of 608 public school districts for student achievement in the state of Ohio, as reported by the Ohio Department of Education, which will require incremental progress of at least 1% annually. We're currently 64. By 2021, we need to be in the top 5%, 30 or higher. We have work to do. But we set the stage, create the expectation that it's about continuous improvement, and we clearly have the ability, given the staff and the resources that are available within the school district, that our kids deserve no less. And again, it's the top 5%. If we get there faster, we raise the bar. But we have to create a culture of expectation to tell them where we're going. So the conversation this afternoon with leadership resulted in we need to be in the top 5%, number 30 or higher. How are we going to do that? Benchmarks. So the continuous improvement plan. We try to create the work, and again, this has been updated since the iteration on Saturday morning for continued conversation within leadership. But for benchmark number 1, there are 7. The first is, and this is again, it's in the spirit of continuous improvement for transparency of expectation. What's the work? Number 1, increase achievement. Why we're here. Increase the district performance index rank as compared to all Ohio school districts on the local report card from number 64, the 2015-16 ranking, which was in the top 11%, to number 54, 2016-17 ranking, which will be in the top 9% or better. So we need to move from 64 to 54 or better. And again, within 5 years, we're going to number 30 or higher. To get there, we have to make incremental growth. My suggestion is we do 2% for next year. We go from 64 to 54 and create the expectation that this is where we're going in the school district because of continuous improvement. Benchmark 2, facilitate a year or more of growth for every year of instruction. And again, we had this conversation at our meetings. I think this one's very straightforward. We should have demonstrated at least 1 year's worth of growth or higher on the district component grade, measuring progress of all students in math and reading, and grades 4 through 8 are calculated by OGE. To me, this is simple. You have a year's worth of instruction. I expect a year's worth of growth or higher. Benchmark 3, or subgroups. Meet or exceed the state's achievement and gap closing standards for specific subgroups, scoring below the state proficiency requirement in reading and math. And again, to put this into context, to understand what does this really mean, we have to increase by 5% or more the performance of student subgroups based upon ethnicity, race, or socioeconomic status from the 2016 to the 2017 ODE gap closing report. We have to continue to find ways to close the gap for students in our school district based upon specific ethnicity, race, or socioeconomic status. We must improve. The F on the report card for gap closure is unacceptable. We need to own that and have a conversation to disaggregate the data at the student level when it becomes available in 2 weeks to understand what are we going to do to help these kids grow differently and close the gap. Benchmark 4 is graduate students who are college and career ready, specifically continue to earn a grade of A for the graduation rate component on the local report card. We've had an A, we need to maintain an A. There's no other acceptable option for us. We must maintain an A on the report card. And then the second is increase the district ACT mean score to be at least 20% higher than the state average. I've added this because Ohio Revised Code now requires the local school district to administer the ACT or SAT to every junior in high school, beyond freshmen, sophomores, or seniors that may choose to take it. This will have a statewide impact because every school in the state now has to administer the ACT or the SAT to every junior. Not every junior in New Albany, we're very close, and other school districts, not so much. every junior will now be required to test. It's going to have an impact on the overall state aggregate. So I want to ensure that we're at least 20% higher. I actually believe it's possible that we'll be significantly greater than that, but need to put it into context that now every child in the state of Ohio that's a junior will likely, probably 90% of them, take the ACT. Benchmark 5 is enhanced school culture and social emotional well-being, and this is specifically to administer age-appropriate student climate surveys to establish baseline data on the percentage of students who feel safe at school, supported, and have at least one staff member to approach with problems. Our first attempt at this, pending your approval of the benchmarks, will be the Gallup survey. So we will administer the Gallup survey in the next 4 weeks within the school district to students enrolled in grades 5 through 12. It's a national survey. We will publish to the parent population a letter that will give them access to the 24 questions that students will answer electronically to get us information back related to 4 specific domains that directly apply to this benchmark. But it's the first opportunity for us to collect baseline data. The good news is, if we do it in the next 4 weeks, it's free. So there's really no reason why we wouldn't do it, because we need the information from the kids, and it's free as long as we do it within the national testing window of Gallup. If you go outside those 4 weeks, you have to pay. We will do it within the 4 weeks. Number 6 is demonstrate sustainable fiscal management. This directly applies to Mrs. Jenkins, myself, dominantly. As the treasurer and the superintendent within the school district for the first 2 bullets, but it also has direct application across the school district. The first is earn an annual Government Finance Officer Association Award for Excellence in Financial Reporting for the district's comprehensive annual financial report. We published an excellent CAFR. We will do the same. It is a tremendous amount of work. However, it provides an inordinate amount of information to our public related to how the finances work and what we spend money on within the school district. So it's our intent that we will publish an excellent CAFR and earn an award for it. The second is to receive an unqualified audit with fewer than three minor compliance citations, And again, Becky, being the treasurer tiara queen that she is, for all the awards that she gets, because I get to tease her. I ask her when I walk in her office, which tiara you're going to dust off today. She gets all kinds of awards for her tremendous unqualified work that she does related to the audits. The auditors were just here. She calls them her friends. So they've been in the school district, they're going to come back, but we will produce an unqualified audit with no more than 3, hopefully 0 compliance citations. And the last one is really looking towards the future. And Becky and I have spent some time going through the 5-year forecast that we actually will present to you at your next work session, because you have to adopt the next version in October, and try to identify a way for continued cost savings to look at efficiencies that we can create that will have a positive impact to the long-term future of the district related to the forecast, and hopefully help us work with you to create this whole definition around sustainability. So we're recommending that the fiscal year 2017 5-year forecast line item 4.5, which is total expenditures, be reduced by at least $560,000 to result in a 1% reduction in operational expenditures that will then positively impact the district's 5-year forecast and eliminate deficit spending in fiscal year 18. Becky and I believe it's possible to find that cost savings and operational expenditures. So although I've made significant changes in the course of the last 3 years within operations to try to effectuate that line item, we're committed to finding another $560,000 so that it doesn't create deficit spending in 18. And you'll see that, again, pending your approval, in the 5-year forecast conversation in October. The last one is benchmark 7, and it's about engagement. Ensure community engagement and stakeholder satisfaction. So implement annual community and staff surveys to establish baseline data on the level of satisfaction with educational quality, school culture, communications, climate, and our fiscal management. It really is the collective we that helps our school district be everything that it can, from the home of our parents and our taxpayers within our community, to meeting their expectations to maintain real estate values, to the quality of education that's delivered in the classroom or the services that are provided through other employees that work here. we need people's feedback. So we can only get better if we receive the feedback. So we recognize there's opportunity for continuous improvement and would like to receive that data back from everyone associated as stakeholders to our school district. Lastly, and I'm going to end with this, is really our focus. It's about continuous improvement. And I talked about this at the retreat, we talked about it at the last meeting, but it fundamentally boils down to all employees will be accountable for implementing research-based practices, including a rigorous and aligned curriculum, common assessments, focused instruction, and data-driven decisions to achieve the best academic and developmental outcomes for every student within a fiscally sustainable budget. Now, I know there's still work to do in this focus, and I'll use the example, sustainable budget. The 5 of you are going to have to work with us to define what does that mean. So there's work to be done, but we have to understand where we're going. This is the culture of continuous improvement that I believe needs to be presented and ultimately enacted within the culture of the school district to help our kids ultimately meet the purpose of why we're here, student achievement, well-being, and growth. That's why we all come to the New Albany Plain Local School District. So every employee needs to understand what's the direction, what's the expectation, and why are we here. So the why, the how, and the what matter, and we're going to continue to permeate that within the culture of the school district. With that, I know we've given you a lot of information, but we would welcome the opportunity to answer any questions or receive comments that you specifically have, particularly related to the benchmark.
Well, I almost do not know where to begin. I am not known for dramatic shows of effusive praise, but I almost want to jump up and down and cheer for the benchmarks, the goals for the coming year, the clarity of purpose that exists, the leadership that exists within this document and in what you have said. If I would have guessed when this board started work that we would be here in this period of time, I would have been hopeful, but hope is not a strategy, and the work that's been done is, I'm really thrilled with where we are. I think the first benchmark of going from our current place of 64 to 54 is a reasonably aggressive one, but it's clear that you made the choice, because I know what we've talked about, and it's clear that you made the choice, and your leadership team made the choice, and it means that there's a belief that we can. The fact that there's clarity of going from the top 11% to the top 5% in a 5-year period with incremental improvement along that line, starting with the biggest chunk, which actually makes the most sense, is a very good start. It's the kind of leadership, Michael, that is exactly what this district needs. It's exactly what I thought and what this board thought when we asked you to be our superintendent. The fact that you've worked with your leadership team and have come up with these benchmarks and this clarity, I think, is a testament to your leadership and your team's leadership and willingness to step up. In addition to you and your core leadership team, I think it would be a wonderful statement if everyone in the district, including us, were held accountable to the same goal, that we're going to go from 64 to 54 in this next year. And I think it would be good for everyone in the district to have that same goal, regardless of their position. And I know it's easy to say, well, this job doesn't directly impact academics, but the mission of this district is this level of achievement. It is this continuous improvement. And I think it would be wonderful for everyone to be on the same page. I think it would be a tremendous statement. I'm certainly willing to do that and put myself in that same position. As I look through the benchmarks, we could have some additional discussion on a few of the words, but I don't have much to question. I think we'll finalize some of the details, but it's right on target. I'm a very strong believer in that employee motivation is really a function of employees having autonomy, mastery, and purpose. My favorite speaker on that is Daniel Pink. And I think when you see the leadership that exists, your commitment to having classroom teachers have the autonomy to use their skills in conjunction with clear curriculum that is agreed to at all levels is a measure of that autonomy. Your commitment to their ability, their need to demonstrate mastery of those subjects and those skills, and the purpose of this district, when you include the purpose statement that we've all agreed to, and it flows through everything that you presented tonight, is indicative of clarity of purpose. It's how people move forward. It's what leadership really means. So I'm grateful and appreciate it, and I'm still not going to jump up and down, but I'm pretty excited.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. It's really the efforts of the collective team. I will tell you, most of them are in the room tonight because this has been really a journey over the last, really since April 12th, but mostly since August 1st, where we solidified the team and put things in place. But I can't do this alone. We have wonderful people that work here that are here for the right reasons. And I think back to your comment, it really just emulates the fact that this is our opportunity to put students first, raise the expectations, believe that we can, and expect great things within the school district every single day. So I appreciate the opportunity that you've afforded me, clearly as the new superintendent, but with the autonomy to basically stay out of my A and let me do my job and work with the leadership to the classroom level, even with classroom teachers, back to your point, Phil, to empower them to do what's necessary to meet the needs of the kids and take responsibility for it. We start with ownership, and I think we've clearly demonstrated that expectation. Everybody else is speechless.
I think Phil kind of spoke for all of us. We're all, I mean, I can speak for myself that this is, some of the things Phil was saying had been going through my mind as we were presenting too. And one of them was, gosh, we made a good choice with Mr. Sawyers.
I agree.
And
choices throughout the room.
And you built a great team. And I feel so optimistic with, as Phil said, the clarity around each one of these goals, and just feeling like we have the foundation for the district all to move, march together now. And, I know you have a vision to share your bullseye, and I would love to, hear more about that at some point. But it's great to, get the parents, the community, the school community, everyone on the same page, and just to echo Phil, just the clarity is incredible. So thank you all for the work that was put into this.
Thank you. Color, with your permission.
No, I just want to say, I thought the debate didn't start till 9:30 or 9 o'clock. I just want to say again, thank you. I'm excited as well. I know that a lot of work has gone into this. I think I sent you a note earlier this week, a conversation I had at Starbucks with a parent who came up to me and said, I really see things changing. And then they had anecdotally told me that they had heard that from the teaching community as well. So I know that this is the fun part of the job, right? Setting the goals and the strategy, and now we got to go execute. We got to execute the strategy together. And I think that from what I'm hearing, everybody's on board. I want to encourage the parents out there to get on board. I mean, these are goals that are driven academically. We have an impact in how our kids perform academically, and we've got to get engaged. And I speak as someone who was at 9 soccer games this weekend. So there was no math, although the ones who weren't playing were doing their homework. But, this is more than what the district does. If we're going to achieve these goals, it's got to be as a community, and that comes down to night after night and day after day. So thank you for laying out the strategy. I love the benchmarks. I like the incremental progress. I like the long-term vision as well. But I know the hard work is ahead, and I know that we've got to keep everybody on the same team, and including the the community and the kids that show up every day to your classroom. So thanks for all the efforts.
I mean, I don't want to waste everybody's time. I think this is incredible work. This is something that I believe the entire community can get behind, and I'm excited to get to work.
We'll find things for you to do.
Very well.
Sustainable budget.
Yes.
And I just want to let everybody in the room know how pleased, obviously you can hear it, how pleased we are with your work and with your commitment to moving the district ahead. And we feel the excitement in the room from all of you as well. So it's wonderful. I think one of the things that Phil said that really struck me was just about a year ago, in another couple of weeks or months, we had a school board election, and some saw that as being the end of the world as we know it today. And really what's happened is there's been a change agent, basically, that's caused us to really look hard at everything we're doing, and to be willing to ask the tough questions and really think about how we move forward from here. So just in terms of the way that the board is working together now, and in terms of the relationship that the board has with the superintendent and treasurer, it's working just as it should. I mean, we together worked on the mission, we worked together on the why and the what, and the answers to those two questions were influenced by all of you and by the people we listened to in the community. And at that point then, the board was able to turn it over to Mr. Sawyers and his team so that they could come up with how to do it, when to do it, and how we're going to know if it's actually achieved. So congratulations to everybody here on this board. We've come a long way too. So we will continue to grow and get better right along with you. Okay. And that brings us to our updates. Mrs. Mackey.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know who I am, I teach fourth grade. I'm Melissa Mackey, and I do want to get home for the debate. I just started texting me. I ran these off and I forgot to bring them with me, so I will send them to you. But thank you for letting us share some of the great things that teachers do on a daily basis with students. Chrissy Pratt and Jenny Callahan, who are third grade teachers in the 2A building, started off the school year by using Joe Buller's inspirational math activities. He's a professor at Stanford University and is involved in promoting mathematics reform. So they're using the materials on his website that are aligned with brain science that supports a growth mindset and exploratory math teaching strategies. And then last Friday, they received a message from this particular professor from Stanford asking if she could include some of the pictures and parts of their newsletter for her webcast. Oh. So kind of an exciting thing for those teachers and students. Our director of drama, Elliot Lumber, has joined the board of directors at the Short North Stage, which is a professional theater company dedicated to bringing first-class live performances in the Short North. He's going to be advising their artistic and education committee, and he has drafted 5 goals for their education program and will work with the board to implement them throughout the 2016-17 production season. And just the last one that I want to highlight is something regarding the 9th graders in the high school. Most of them had not been born in time. Well, not in time, but witness September 11, 2001. So Don Scott, 9th grade humanities teacher, created a meaningful activity in which students visited the 9/11 Memorial Museum website and listened to 3 or more of the podcasts of their choice, which provided primary resources for the students And she wanted to comment that beyond the obvious cultural literacy aspect of this, the students stressed their active listening speaking skills. And then this is going to be shared with other humanities teachers in the high school.
Wait, never mind.
And I do promise to do.
I got it in my mind.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone from OC this evening? No. Okay. Well, let's turn over our agendas. And are there any board liaison reports this evening?
I'll just do a real quick one. Mr. Sawyers already alluded to the fact that we had a PTO meeting, and it was all of the PTO presidents, and Mr. Sawyers, Mrs. Jenkins, our communications team, and it was really just to get together and ground people in where we are. So Mr. Sawyers kicked off the meeting by sharing our bullseye and a little bit more background related to kicking off the school year. And we also talked about our goal to kind of come together as one PTO and how we were doing against that objective. And we had some bumps kind of at the start of the year with some of our systems and trying to get everybody online. And but overall, we've made great progress as a PTO. We've got every PTO has a website. We have one website where all of the PTO data is captured on one calendar now. They're all able to allow for signups on payforit.net, which is new. So we've really kind of gone electronic, which was a big objective for this year. So they're doing great things, and I'll keep you posted.
Great. Any others? An invitation from Mr. Carter at the high school about participating in the homecoming parade, which is this Friday evening. And I sent him back an email and I said, I think that sounds like a lot of fun, but let me check with my friends on the board to see if anybody else is available Friday evening. I believe the parade starts at 6.
6 at the Heights Center.
Do you want to get back to me after the meeting and let me know?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Good. I think that's everything we have there. Local report card?
It's on here in case there's anything else you want to ask. I think we sufficiently covered it, but it was on there in case you needed a conversation. Same thing with annual goals. The goals apply. The intent is that based upon the discussion this evening, Ms. Jenkins and I will work to incorporate the benchmarks into the annual goals that we're responsible for to submit to you by Friday, and then translate those into building level goals beyond the director level, so the directors, the coordinators, to the principals, so that there's alignment throughout the organization. But we will send you the final versions by Friday to meet the September 30th filing requirement.
Okay, good. I see.
Mrs. Kohler,
Oh, yes.
did you want to do a FERC update?
What?
Oh,
The
FRC.
FRC
FERC.
update?
Oh,
Want
I
to do
did
FERC?
forget. I can try if you fill in. We did have a meeting
over here.
of the Financial Review and Reporting Committee last week. And unfortunately, Mr. Darrow had to be absent. So usually he gives such a wonderful report. The meeting was very, very good. We reviewed the monthly financial statements. We began to talk a little bit about the planning for longer term.
For the 5-year forecast?
Yes. And I think, I'm trying to remember what else we did, Becky.
We talked about the board's insurance committee.
Oh, that's right.
And then we also posed the question to the Finance Committee about fiscal sustainability and what they thought. I think we still have more discussion that needs to happen, even at that level. So perhaps at our next meeting, which is October 17th, I believe is the date, we can bring that up again. But everyone seems to struggle with that one. But those were the items that we covered.
Right, right. And I think they were struggling with the same thing in terms of financial sustainability that some of us are as well. And that was, at what point does the objective to be to stay off the ballot begin to impact academic programming? And I think that in a nutshell, that's really what we're going to have to talk through as we move forward as well. So it was a good meeting. Would have been better had you been there.
My apologies. I appreciate you standing in ably.
Or I did my best. Okay. And looks like we are now going to revisit our support organizations policy because there were some tweaks based on discussion and input, huh?
Yes, so we had the discussion at the last board meeting, and then we also had input from outside folks in the community. So in trying to make the policy a little more detailed without going too detailed, because the really detailed information should be in the guidelines. So we'll just run through quickly. The second paragraph, we just added subject to the group's compliance with board policy. That paragraph talks about treating support organizations as friends and supportive.
Board members, you have a red line version in your folder. So if you found the corrected, go to the next document, it'll be the red line. Thank you.
Sorry about that. The third paragraph, we just added or combination thereof, but for logos, insignia, and emblems. It's not just one or the other, it could be any of those. And for such further future use. So some input that we received is that groups could ask for permission to use these emblems or to use facilities. We would grant that support group permission, and then they might try to use the facilities to make money, and we don't want that to happen. So, but, not to not make money, but then they would outsource that as well. So, or for such further use for that approval. The next paragraph, again, just a combination thereof. The last paragraph on the first page, I did add general liability coverage. So we have an umbrella policy. All of our current support organizations are listed. The district does not charge that coverage. It would be $70 if we did, but because we want them to be covered, but it is just general liability insurance. So if someone falls and gets hurt at an event, that's covered. It does not cover theft or those kinds of things. Those support organizations would have to go out and get their own. But we did say in the very last, this is not a change when applicable for the groups to pay for the coverage. So if the board would ever choose to charge, then we would let the groups know that they would need to pay. On the next page, B, and may charge for such membership. So we don't want staff members to be officers of the support organizations. However, they can and are encouraged to be members, and they can be charged for that. And that was just a clarification. It wasn't that they couldn't before. In E, previously it said coach, advisor, and or athletic director. We don't want the coaches to be the people that are determining what should happen or shouldn't happen for the athletic departments, because we have an athletic director, so we have him. And then advisor, I did keep advisor so that, not every support organization is for sports. So the academic support organizations would have an advisor that's not covered under the athletic director. And then also in that group, because support organizations are about students, I added and our students. In F, some questions came up about commingling of funds, and anytime it raises funds, they do have the capability of donating the funds to the district. So to make sure that that's clear, we just added the sentence, district support organizations may elect to donate funds to the school district for purchasing opportunities as applicable. The other piece to that would be, we wouldn't have a point where there'd be a big piece of equipment that needs to be purchased and one check would come from us and one from a booster group and one from another. We would have all those funds in one, would be donated to the district and then one check paid. That way we also have ownership of the equipment and can include it in our facility and equipment insurances. Then in H, again, a support organization may not profit from the rental fees associated with the use of district facilities. So they shouldn't be using our facilities for free and then allowing an outside entity to rent the facility. Next page under J, not just projects or expenditures, we added that. They should be in compliance with board policy. Under support organization compliance, again, or combination thereof. So under A, I'm going back and forth trying to get with the Attorney General's office. So we've added, if appropriate, the organization shall maintain a current and valid 501c3 designation. I have not gotten the answer yet as to whether or not a support organization must have a 501c3 to then register with the Attorney General's office. So that's why we put if appropriate. Once I get that confirmed, it would be included then.
Real quick question on that. If the rules that govern a 501c3 are the rules which make it a nonprofit, if they're not required, then wouldn't we have to beef up all of our rules so that they are a nonprofit, so that we essentially force them to be a nonprofit?
Mm-hmm.
So
once I get that answer, we'll modify the policy if necessary.
Okay.
Becky just had a question on going all the way to the top of B under the rules, and may charge for such membership. That's to indicate that an organization can charge its members. You can't just join as a unpaid.
No.
They may do it. I just didn't know the
I
purpose.
had the same question.
No, so they don't have to charge, but because we said that officers or employees are not permitted to be officers, but we encourage them to join, it's okay for the support organization to charge. I think some of the groups charge $2 to be a member or whatever. So we're saying it's okay for you to charge them. We just don't want them to be officers making a decision.
Okay, so it's really written for faculty, to clarify that faculty could be charged.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Under support organization compliance, A, number 2, the organization shall immediately notify the Board of Education of any notices or other communications concerning the tax exempt status of the organization issued by the IRS or any other entity with relevant jurisdiction. That was added, and that is the conclusion of the changes.
Since there are changes, is this still the second reading, or is this the first reading of the new version?
It's the second reading, unless you want it to be the first reading of the new version and we can bring it back.
It was just a point of order. I really haven't the foggiest idea. Whatever.
It's on the agenda. It's the
Whatever's
last action
proper.
item for adoption this evening. It would have to be removed from the agenda if you don't wish it to move forward in its current revised state.
Do we want to wait until we know that one piece?
501c, yes.
I mean, it says if appropriate, so
Oh, okay, so you
we're
feel
not,
like we've
this
covered
is
it?
not forcing it.
Okay.
And that once I find out for sure, we can bring it back.
It's not, but if it isn't required, then we're going to have to revise it pretty substantially to incorporate all of the language around a nonprofit. So as much as I'd love to put this to bed, it seems like there's open questions, at least on that.
Just on that, yeah.
One of the things goes back to policy can be revised at any time. So if you move forward this evening with the action item that's on the agenda, at least it starts the discussion where we can begin to educate the groups within the school district of say, this is the language that's presently adopted by the board. There's one section that we're waiting on a ruling from the Attorney General. However, the bulk of the policies here might have to be slightly revised, but it helps us start the education process to know this is the direction you're going because you've actually adopted the policy in its current state.
We're already a month into the school year. People are doing this stuff, we might as well get them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my thinking.
And I also have the Attorney General's office coming out on November 9th, which is the same time as the PTO meeting. And so what I want to do is, once this is passed, communicate with all of the support groups and invite them, their leaders, to come in so that they can hear best practices and how should these support organizations run.
We will ask the Attorney General's office when they do return the phone call if there is a provision as to why a 501c3 would not be required. For what circumstance might that be, so that we can understand what impact it may or may not have for our school district? Because it might not be any organization that would ever be applicable to us.
Okay. It's time for public participation, and we've had no one sign up to speak with us this evening. So let's move into the consent agenda items. We'll take them in two groups, and let's do the treasurer's items for action, which are items A1, one single item this evening. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. And second?
Second.
Thank you, Debbie. Ms. Jenkins?
Yes, so we are 2 months into our fiscal year. Not a surprise, we're on plan in all areas. The only fluctuation that I'm seeing is actually with state aid, and that's because they're still making some adjustments, not only from last fiscal year, but the year before. But it's $120,000 more than we anticipated, but I still will not expect to end the year any differently than what is calculated by the department. So we're on plan.
Are there any questions? If not, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. McClelland?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
President Kohler?
Yes, that motion carries. The next items are the superintendent's items for action, and we can take these as a group. It would be item B1A through item CH. Oh, there isn't one. Oh, I didn't see it. I'm sorry, CI, not CH. I stand corrected.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Sawyers?
I'm sorry, President Kohler. The agenda items in these sections are standard agenda items that you see on a monthly basis related to personnel. I will call your attention just to a couple that are a little bit different. If you go to page 9 of the agenda, letter D, under donations, I do want to, and this is again another plug for why it's so important to support the New Albany Rotary Club for the Eagle Egg Drop. There's a $20,000 donation being received this evening from the New Albany Community Foundation related to the extracurricular grants that are provided to students to participate and offset pay to participate fees. So of the scholarships that were issued last spring and or this fall, we're now doing the collection from the foundation, and it's a $20,000 value that's coming to the school district based upon the donations received to date. Letter E, this is an annual, but I want to point it out because it's part of the agreement that we have with partnership with Kappa to help us do programming to support the technical needs specifically at the Jeannie B. McCoy Center. So that is the Kappa agreement for annual approval. And then letter H is a good example of prepared for success, the indicator and component on the report card. It's a motion to approve a course for addition at the middle school for 7th and 8th graders to take a college credit plus class through Columbus State University in English Language Arts. Beyond that, the other items on the agenda are standard employee-related and or contractual requirements that are presented for your approval this evening. Thank you.
Are there any questions about these items? Nope. Okay. Thank you very much. Could we have a roll call,
Ms.
please?
Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
Mr. McClelland?
Yes.
President Kohler?
Yes, that motion carries. And we have one more opportunity for public participation, and I didn't see anybody walk in. So we're going to dispense with that. And now all we need is a motion for adjournment. You can see on the agenda that our next work session will be on October the 10th, and our next regular board meeting will be on October the 24th.
So moved. May we all go home and watch the madness.
Yes.
Second.
Thank you very much. And a roll call.
Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
Mr. McClellan?
Yes.
President Kohler?
Yes, let the madness begin.